Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Korra news update video. And this one's going to be about the Korra comics, specifically Korra Turf Wars Part 3. So we know the release date, of course, it's June 13th for comic stores, June 26th elsewhere. But the news here is that we now have the product description for the book. So we have a brief synopsis of what the plot is going to be about. So I suppose spoilers, because obviously part 2 isn't out yet, so the part 3 description could spoil events from part 2, and kind of does. So if you really want to stay spoiler free on Turf Wars, probably not the best thing to go ahead with the video and hear what the description has to say. But if you're okay with that, let's get into it. So, thanks to Amazon.com, we now have the description, and it reads, "When Asami is kidnapped, Korra sets out to the spirit world to find her. Now teeming with dark spirits influenced by the half-spirit, half-human Tokuga, the landscape is more dangerous than ever before. The two women must trust in each other and work together if they are to make it out alive. Their fate is revealed in this stunning, action-packed conclusion to The Legend of Korra Turf Wars." So immediately, Asami's kidnapped, so that obviously is probably the cliffhanger ending to part 2, that Asami gets kidnapped, potentially by Tokuga or by spirits. Korra has to go and find her, and as well as that, the idea that there are dark spirits around is interesting, because that obviously means that something happens that is big enough that it actually turns a good amount of spirits dark. So, is that something that Tokuga can do because he's now half spirit? Or what? And just the fact that they officially are calling Tokuga now half spirit, half human is very interesting to me. I wonder what that necessarily means, and how they're going to go about explaining that, because it's not necessarily how, like, in terms of my understanding of what happened to Yao and now what happens to Tokuga, it isn't necessarily the way I'd refer to him as half spirit, because the way that definition almost seems like he now has half of a spirit's powers or something like that. So we'll have to wait and see obviously what exactly that does to him, but the fact that they're influenced by him despite being half human is very interesting, and just to see how that works out. So hopefully we get more development on Tokuga over the next 2 parts, but yeah, just your standard stuff, because it's Korra. They say, must trust in each other and work together. I think that was in the description for part 1. But yeah, their fate is revealed. I don't know. It seems a little bit kind of overdramatic the way they're playing that up, as if Asami or Korra might die or something like that in this book. I don't think that's going to happen. But very interesting that there's no mention whatsoever of the election. So either that just happens in part 2 and is fully resolved, and it's just oh, Julie's president or Raiko remains president, and I'm assuming something along that lines probably happens, unless they just, to keep it spoiler free, they just didn't want to reveal the resolution of a certain plot point. But we obviously have to wait and see on that. But yeah, nice to have the description for part 3. It more or less means we have most of our kind of kind of preview kind of content for Turf Wars now. We're just obviously waiting for the preview pages for part 2, which I think we may get before the end of the year, given that it's a mid to late January release for part 2, and then preview pages for part 3, obviously more towards the middle of the year. But we now have an idea about what the core of the Turf Wars story is going to be about. I suppose however they go about resolving the human spirit stuff will remain interesting. I just hope, once again, that when they resolve this plot, it's not just a case of Korra resolves this Tokuga influence on the spirit's plot, but they don't touch the core human spirit conflict thing. It would be really frustrating if they just ended part 3 with Korra in the same position with the spirits of just, they still don't really trust humans, but they kind of appreciate that she dealt with Tokuga or something like that. I want some big moments relating to the whole human spirit conflict. I hope that's what happens. because that's obviously been the thing I've been most excited for with Turf Wars. We didn't get a ton of it in part 1. I hope they really delve into it in the next 2 parts. But yeah, I think that's about all there really is here. It is interesting, you know, with Asami getting kidnapped. That's going to be like part of the dynamic here. Seeing how Korra reacts to, you know, her girlfriend being kidnapped will be interesting. And then potentially, I think more interesting, like, what does Asami do? Is she just like a captive by like spirits for most of the book, or does she actually get to do something, or is Asami like more important in part 2, and her being kidnapped is actually a really big thing? Because for me, I as well as the human spirit stuff, I really want to see Asami get like a notable moment to develop her character, and not just have like the Korra and Asami relationship be primarily like developed through Korra, who's a really developed character, versus like Asami, who's quite underdeveloped compared to Korra, and it feels like everything we know about the relationship is kind of through Korra rather than through Asami. So I hope they get time to do that. And then obviously, like, the cover for part 3 has like most of the characters, like Lin's there, Tenzin's there, Jinora, Mako, Bolin. Where are they involved in all of this, and so on? But we'll have to wait and see. It's still a long way away from Turf Wars Part 3, but we now have the description. So once again, release date is June 13th, 2018 and June 26th, 2018. First date is the comic book store date. Second date is like the Amazon mass market release date. So yeah, that's been the video for today. Thanks for watching, and bye.